What's up, guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2006 Buick Rainier CXL. Up front is a 4.2-liter straight six, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Buick Rainier for two reasons. First of all, this helps me complete my National Park named vehicles alongside the GMC Acadia and the Toyota Sequoia and other vehicles like the Big Bend edition of the Bronco and things like that. But the second reason is the fact that this is a very important vehicle for GM. It's a very important vehicle for SUVs at all, and I'm excited to share with you why that is later on in the video. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And huge thank you to North Naperville Autos for letting me borrow their Buick Rainier for this video. More on them later, but if you'd like to browse their inventory, you can do so in the description below. But let's get back to that 4.2-liter straight six under the hood. Well, there were two engines offered during the time of the Rainier. You could get the inline six, this was the base model engine, or you could step up to the 5.3-liter V8. Now, for the 2006 model year, they actually refreshed the engine, and so it actually made 291 horsepower for the straight six, but they hadn't refreshed the 5.3, so it still made 300 horsepower. So you only lost 9 horsepower by not getting the bigger engine, which I think is nice. The inline six is also interesting because it is really smooth. That's sort of been one of the characteristics of inline engines. They're a little bit smoother, and so that is certainly nice to see. Like I said, paired to it is a 4L60E 4-speed automatic transmission, and it's fine, it's doing the job, but 4L60Es have never been known for their longevity or reliability, so if you do towing, you're going to want to add maybe a transcooler or something of the sort to help out, because these transmissions don't love doing anything extra beyond regular driving. Last but not least, this particular Rainier is 4-wheel drive. However, you could find 2-wheel drive Rainiers during its run. How does it feel to drive the Buick Rainier? Well, it is a nice luxury experience. This was supposed to be a luxury SUV built off the GMT 350 platform. So it's shared with like the Saab 9-7 and the Chevy Trailblazer. I think it's actually pretty smooth, and it does do a pretty good job around town, and I'm happy with it. Visibility is okay, not the greatest, but also not the worst. And this was the first production vehicle to use side acoustic laminate glass. So it does offer a more quiet ride than other competitors. So cool to see that little fact. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a ton of gauges. Off to the left is my tachometer, in the center is my speedometer, and off to the right we have our oil pressure, battery voltage, fuel, and coolant temperature. On the steering wheel, we have our voice commands and source to the left, information and travel distance to the left as well, and off to the right we have the seek, volume, information, and return icon. Off to the left we do have a climate control vent, headlight switches, fog light switch, dome light on and off, and gauge dimmer switch. And moving on to the door, we have our power windows, power locks, and memory seats, of which you get 2 levels of. Moving into the center, we get 2 more climate control vents and the radio. Pretty standard radio here. They've moved away from the theft lock system of the early 2000s, but still a cassette player and CD here in 2006. Down below that, we have our climate controls. Dual zone climate is a very welcome sight here in the Buick Rainier. Didn't mean to rhyme, but it did. And I really like the digital readout. I love this sort of cyan green readout look that GM was using in this era. So nostalgic for me. Absolutely love that. Down below, we have 2 12-volt outlets and our rear wiper controls, a small cup holder, and the shifter. The shifter is a big, chunky push-button shifter you'll find in a lot of other GM products of the era. Nothing new here, but they did dress it up a little bit for Buick, adding the chrome button and wood accent. Handbrake off to the right, and then a bigger cup holder at the back, so we will do a big freaking bottle test here in the Buick Rainier, and I'm very happy to report that it does, in fact, pass the big friggin' bottle test. Center console has some storage for CDs, but that's it. And the seats. The seats are leather. They are very comfortable, and as I said, the driver's seat is memory and heated, which, again, nice to see. It is a more luxury-oriented vehicle. Buick has always been the more luxury brand, so that makes sense. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, we're in the back of the Buick Rainier, and a couple of things to note. First of all, I do have 2 climate vents down in the center. Absolutely love to see that. I also get my own radio controls and fan controls, so I get my own climate, audio, all of that down here, as well as a 12-volt outlet and 2 pop-out cup holders. No center console, but all of that was pretty much covered down there in the center. And we can move the seats up and forward to fold them flat. Seat back pockets as well, power windows. Really nice features back here. This was a luxury SUV of sorts. It sort of fell into that middle ground where it wasn't like Escalade, but it also wasn't Blazer. So it fit in the middle there, which I find kind of cool and a nice middle ground. Push button lights, very 90s really, even though it was into the 2000s, but cool to see nevertheless. Let's hop into the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, around the back of the Buick Rainier CXL, and a couple of things to note. First of all, we get this big chunky button right here. Pull that up and pop that up to just open up the rear glass. Absolutely love when SUVs give you this option, because then you can access stuff without it rolling away, or if you just need to grab something quick, you don't need to open up the whole door. Come down here for the larger button and you can pull it up the rest of the way. Kind of heavy. And once we are back here, plenty of space. As I mentioned, these 2 seats do fold down. You have to fold the bottom of the second row up, and then they fold flat. We do have this little cubby down here. Pull this up for some extra storage. Not totally sure why they did this, but they did this in the Trailblazer as well, so very, very cool. And we get some pockets on the left and right. There is the rear cargo space of the Buick Rainier, in case you were ever curious. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I'm honestly not sold on the looks of the Rainier. I don't think it's very pretty, which is a stark contrast to the place it was named after. Mount Rainier in Washington State is so beautiful that this is really not a good depiction of it. I think there's a little bit too much going on. I think it's trying a little too hard. It doesn't really look that luxurious, and so that might explain its relatively short production run here in the States. However, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Buick Rainier? Well, as I mentioned, I was very excited to do so, and I still am. Mount Rainier National Park in Washington was one of my favorite spots that I've been to. I've been to a lot of national parks, and I really did love Mount Rainier. I'll show some video footage here. It is great. It's really, really lovely. If you do go, it is one of the snowiest places on Earth by number of days with snow on the ground. Late July to early August is really going to be your only time to go without most of the trails being covered in snow. I learned this the absolute hard way. This was taken on the 8th of July. These videos were taken the 8th of July. Yeah. So, anyway, can't recommend that enough. But why was this vehicle so important? And so we have to go back to the 1970s for SUVs. The government cracked down on emissions and fuel economy, called the CAFE standards. They set these standards for vehicles that they had to achieve, or else they would pay a really high tax, which would make the cars basically unaffordable. But the cars were split up into 2 different segments. Passenger vehicles, as we would know today as cars, station wagons. Those had to comply to pretty strict emissions rules. However, light trucks didn't, because they were usually used as farm equipment or businesses. People didn't really own light trucks as family vehicles, and so it would kind of give a tax break and ease up on companies while the consumer vehicles had to conform. However, in the 1970s, the government couldn't decide if the Jeep Wrangler was a car or a light truck. And Jeep petitioned for it to be a light truck to basically get it out of the emissions laws, or at least lessen them. They went to Washington, they petitioned, and they finally got it passed that the Jeep Wrangler was not a passenger car, it was a light truck, and thus, it didn't have to conform to the strict laws. Fast forward into the 80s, Jeep then brings out the Cherokee, and they petition the same way. This is not a passenger vehicle, this is a light truck. And the government said okay. And the Jeep Cherokee did so well that all of the big three other automakers started to follow suit. GM put out the Blazer, and Ford put out the Bronco 2, and then later the Explorer. The thing is that all of these vehicles were built off of truck chassis. They used either the Ford Ranger or the Chevy S10 or the Jeep Wrangler platform so that they could be categorized as light trucks and get around the emission standards. Well, the reason the Buick Rainier is so important and plays into that is that this platform, the GMT 350 platform, used for the Trailblazer and the Saab, was the first platform from GM for their SUVs that wasn't borrowed in their pickup trucks. Because every SUV before this had always been a truck chassis with a passenger compartment bolted on top. And so this is really the moment that it switched over. And this is still technically categorized as a light truck. It still has a lot less emission standards to follow because of that. It is a box frame, body-on-frame vehicle. But for the first time ever, it was no longer shared with the truck chassis, which solidified GM putting money into this category of vehicle on its own and not just trying to double dip. So that's why this was an important vehicle and still is an important vehicle for GM. This was the turning point. And now today we have so many SUVs, and it's because of those emission standards, or well, lack thereof. So the Buick Rainier played an important part in that story. So here it is today in all of its SUV glory. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to North Naperville Autos for letting me take out their Buick Rainier for this video. As I mentioned, this was absolutely awesome. North Naperville Autos, we have worked together for years and years and years. Absolutely wonderful. They always have cool and interesting vehicles in their inventory. This is just the flavor of the day. You can browse their inventory for yourself in the description below. I'm sure you'll find something that you like. They also offer mobile detailing, shipping, and financing. So if you are in the market for a used vehicle in the Chicagoland area or abroad, North Naperville Autos is your place to go. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.